I'm Shae Russell from mining.com.au, and joining me today is the Chair for Coal Australia and Bowen Coking Coal, Nick Jorss, and Grant Wechsel, the Chair for Mining Pro and Jobs for Mining Communities. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks, Shae.
All right, Nick, I'm going to actually start with you, and it's a little bit of the elephant in the room right now. Bowen Coking Coal is in the news, and I don't think we can start today's conversation with addressing this. Mate, what gives? How did we get here?
Yeah, good question. Bowen Coking Coal is a small Queensland-based coal mining company. We started this business about 5 years ago, and we bought some assets, including the Burton mine. We've gone through a ramp-up phase, and we've invested a lot of capital, so over $300 million worth of capital, shareholders' money into the mines. I think what's gone wrong are the two things that we've struggled with. One is, they're both around timing. The first one is coal price. So we missed that giant spike in coal prices in 2022, et cetera. And so we came in as the price was, we came into production as the price was coming off. And the other one is royalties. So I know that we'll talk about royalties at length today, but you know, we went literally on the day or the day after we'd announced that we were opening this mine at Burton. The former Treasurer Cameron Dick and the former Labor government here announced the highest royalty regime in the world, top rate of 40% of revenue, irrespective of profitability, irrespective of whether you can pay your wages, irrespective of anything else. You pay up to 40% of your revenue. Now it's a sliding scale, so it depends, what the price of coal is at the time. But what that has done is just put all of the coal miners under tremendous pressure. It's taken away the good times, if you like. So when the price is up, that money goes to the state government, and in the bad times, obviously people are now, a lot of the industry is now losing money, and they're still paying very large royalties and still in those sort of super profits rates that were introduced by the last Labor government. So in our case, in Bowen's case, we've incurred about $120 million of royalties to the state before we've made a first profit. So it just doesn't work. And to continue on that basis, we're now at a point where we've done the hard work. We've pulled all the costs out of the business. We're one of the lowest cost mines in the Bowen Basin. We don't have the balance sheet because we didn't go through that period of high pricing. But we have a fantastic operation, but it's difficult to make the money to pay the state government for the royalties. So yeah, that is probably the biggest factor. Well, that's the biggest factor that changed. I mean, it's always commodities are always on a cycle, and they go up and they go down, and it's very hard to predict. You try and buy at the bottom, sell at the top. But the royalties are what changed. That's real country risk, that's sovereign risk, that's change in law that came in overnight, no consultation, and absolutely poleaxed the industry in Queensland. And we're now seeing the sort of the chickens coming home to roost in terms of what that's done to the industry, and where that will go now, unless the price spikes up again, is that mines will shut, and obviously our mine is on the edge of that, and we're working very hard for our 500 workers we've got up in central Queensland, keep those jobs going, and coming out of that, you'll have mines shut, and then you'll end up with less royalties, obviously, because you're doing less production. So it's been an unmitigated disaster for the industry, this new royalty regime, and I think we've got a new government in now. They're holding the line. They're saying they're not going to change it, but there's a point at which the industry's broken. It's just and this is the biggest export industry in Queensland, second biggest export industry in Australia. So tens of thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs in communities and surrounding industries. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what's happened to Bowen.
I was going to shift the royalty conversation to the second half of this interview, but let's start with the meat rather than the vegetables. Grant, I'm going to come to you. You've been around this industry quite some time, and you were around when the royalties were introduced. How did the industry initially react to it back then? And, Nick was talking about the immediate impact to one particular mine, but what sort of flow-on effects have you seen unravel?
Well, I think the first point is it's not the impact on one particular mine. So Nick's obviously got Bowen's story close to heart, but I don't think there's a mine in Queensland that's not feeling the pinch from the royalty situation at the moment. I think Coal Australia, which we'll touch on, has talked about a certain percentage of mines being underwater at the current coal price. I think actually that percentage is much higher than what people are saying publicly. There's very few people making money at current prices. You talked about the cyclical nature of the coal price. That's always been the case. There's been plenty of ups and downs over the years in coal mining, but you made money in good times to put away for bad times. Now you pay out all these additional royalties in good times, and you still pay them in bad times when the costs have gone through the roof as well. So it's a broad story. It's not specific to 1, 2, or even 3 coal mines. It's affecting everyone. And probably the second part of your question about how the industry reacted at the time was that there was no consultation. This was the former Labor government. There was no consultation. As Nick said, highest royalty rate in the world. So, the industry was in uproar at the time, and I think has done a fairly good job of sticking up for itself since. But now we find ourselves at a point where we're still dealing with the same situation.
Was whacking royalties on coal sort of an easy vote grab at the time? Did it sound good in the headlines, do you think? Or is it just politicians who know nothing about mining?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest. But I think, my sense is it was an ideological kind of move against an industry that that the government at the time saw as a dying industry, and so they wanted to grab as much as they could on the way out, accelerate its decline potentially. That's certainly, given the magnitude of it, that's certainly the way. And you look at the relative royalties. Top rate of 40%, average is somewhere around, depending on what the price is, 20% or something like that of revenue. Gas about 10%. Gold in Queensland 5%. So it's coal that's been absolutely earmarked with the absolutely highest royalty rate in the world. And I think that just demonstrates that there must have been an element of ideology.
I'll come back to that ideological argument in a minute. I sort of want to stick with this point for the moment. Now, we talked about at current prices, the royalties are really starting to bite. But let's be honest, guys, the coal price is back to where it was in 2021. This is a question for both of you. Coal was doing okay in 2021. You were quite profitable back then. How is it not the same now? What costs have increased drastically?
All of them.
All of them.
All of the above. Yep.
I think the supply chain costs for nearly every coal mine are up 50% or more, over the last 5 years. So there's obviously labour cost in that, which is more of a federal issue that'll continue to increase, I think, in the short term. But then the whole supply chain. You're probably better placed to talk as the owner operator, but it's across the board.
Oh, it absolutely is, and it's what used to be a decent coal price you could make money on is now a loss-making coal price. So that's what's fundamentally changed, is that that those costs have jumped up so far that now you're in what appears to be historically kind of reasonable coal pricing, but nobody's making money. But then, ironically, you're still paying tremendous royalty rates because you're in these sort of what were meant to be sort of super profits coal prices. So that's really the difficulty, is people are still paying the 20, 30%, maybe not today the 40% rate, but they're still in the 20 and 30% rates, which were the new super profits rates when they're not making money. So it's not just super profits, it's actually there's no profits and you're still paying these very large royalty rates.
You've both talked about how important the coal industry is, especially from an employment point of view, to Queensland. Just what kind of risk do these royalties have to the, being able to employ people in this industry? Because just to add a layer to this, coal mostly employs people in regional centres. These aren't big city jobs. These are people in small communities.
Well, the interesting thing, the coal industry is so big in Queensland that it employs, tens of thousands of people in regional Queensland. But there's a comment about Brisbane being the biggest coal mining town in Queensland, because there's not a law firm or a professional services firm in Brisbane who most of their client base isn't a major coal mining company. So it is across the board. And look, jobs are at risk for sure. There's already some impact in places like Mackay. There's not the headline numbers, like Nick talks about the 500 jobs, but there's plenty of contractor jobs, if you want to call them that, rather than the full-time roles that are already gone down drastically. So it's only kind of 10 years ago that Mackay really went through a downturn, and you saw, the utes used to be parked up. You could see them as far as the eye could see near the airport. We're not at that point, but I think there's a real danger that those type of jobs continue to decline. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think, 2013, around that time, a very tough time in the industry. People still remember that, what sort of came through that period and through for, coal price went down from probably 2011 down to 2015, 16, something like that. And it got really tough through that period. So yeah, it is absolutely going to impact a lot of people. We're doing a bit of work through Coal Australia at the moment. I'm just trying to quantify what that looks like, but it is tens of thousands of jobs in central Queensland, and as Grant says, there are also so many jobs in southeast Queensland that rely on the coal industry.
What do those opportunities, career opportunities, look like for people outside of the coal industry? Because you would know through your jobs for mining. Where else do they go? Where do these people go for what is skilled work?
Well, and this is the sheer number of jobs you're talking about in coal mining absolutely outshadows all of the other mining industry in Queensland. So you talk about critical minerals, which is great. I mean, we need these transition metals, but the amount of jobs that come out of that is nowhere near what the coal industry takes. That'd be my first point. The next part around the coal industry is the whole supply chain that goes with it. So those regional towns that we support in jobs for mining community, Moranbahs, Blackwater, but then your Rockhamptons, Mackay's, all the major centres. Most businesses in those towns are directly supporting the coal industry in some way. So from the amount of cars that are sold, the amount of cars that are rented, all the uniform suppliers, motels, hotels, chefs. And I mean, when we did jobs for mining communities, we talked about even the teachers and all the flow-on jobs in regional towns, because you wouldn't have a school in half of those towns if you didn't have coal mines. So it's intrinsically related to all of regional Queensland.
So it just underpins the communities out there. And let's be honest, these are high-paying jobs out in these regions, and people are able to live a really high-quality lifestyle because of the coal industry. But also, too, correct me if I'm wrong, these are multi-decade mines. These aren't pop-up towns that disappear when the mining boom's over. These are mines that run for 30, 40 years. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're long-lived assets, and some longer than others. But yeah, they're around for a very long time, and they really do drive that regional prosperity. But they drive prosperity throughout Queensland as well, and throughout Australia, frankly, being such a big export industry. But regionally, it's critical. You know, that is what underpins these towns, and even the bigger sort of centres like Mackay, Moranbah, even Rockhampton, places like that. So Gladstone, obviously. So, Queensland is a coal state, and that's what it relies on for its prosperity. And I think we ignore that at our peril.
I think we do too. From sometimes I feel like, obviously, when you work in mining, sometimes we just find ourselves talking to like-minded people. How do we convince the federal government of the importance of this industry? And we'll get to it being an energy source in just a moment. I want to focus on the importance of it being an employer and export industry. How do we convince our federal government to understand this?
Look, my view, I mean, the first thing you've got to do is stand up for yourself. Whenever I speak to a politician, those rare occasions, and they say, well, why do we stand up for your industry if you don't stand up for your own industry? So that's really where Coal Australia kind of came out of, and we sort of gathered the coal industry together to say we need a united voice here. I mean, we've got existing organisations, Minerals Council, Queensland Resources Council, and New South Wales Mining, that do a great job, but they're umbrella organisations for a lot of different commodities. And coal has specific issues, and it didn't have a specific voice. So we've now fixed that. We've got a specific voice, and it's really representing these coal communities and these coal workers. We've got 80,000 people signed up now supporting Coal Australia. So Friends of Coal, if you haven't already, get on the database, coalaustralia.com. My little ad, but yeah, it's gone like wildfire. We've got merch, we've got caps, we've got t-shirts, we've got barbecue aprons, we've got thongs, we've got all sorts of stuff. So get on there and have a look. But it's about, these are the quiet Australians, right? These are people just going about their ordinary lives that haven't had a voice. And what we're doing now is we're giving these people a voice. We're restoring the pride in the industry. The pride's always been there, but it's been under the surface, and people have felt, I can't go to a barbecue and tell people I'm in the coal industry. Well, that's changing. We're changing that as we speak. So, I wear I'm in West End and South Brisbane. In Brisbane, I wear my coal cap and my coal shirt proudly down the street, amongst all the Green voters. And that's just what you have to do. Nobody's tackled me yet. But I think, that's what we're unleashing. And it's actually gone, to coin a phrase, it's gone viral. I mean, people have just really got on board because they're so sick of being bludgeoned around the head with the guys, the activists with the megaphone, who are telling them that they're not, their job's not valid. And the reality is we don't mine this coal, our high quality coal, and send it overseas or burn it here. Somebody else is going to do the same thing, right? That's exactly, we can come back to energy, but we have got some of the best high quality coal in the world. We've got some of the safest mines in the world. We've got some of the most productive mines in the world, absolutely massively productive mines. We've got all the infrastructure, the rail lines were built in the 70s and earlier in some cases. And I think that's what really makes this industry sing. We just haven't been in a mindset to sort of stand up for ourselves, and that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, you talked earlier about the idea of the royalties coming in on a dying industry, but the coking coal that we export from Queensland, as you touched on, best in the world, is for steel making. And I think last time we caught up, Darren Lockyer made a great point about that steel's going to build the infrastructure for the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been what Coal Australia has been doing, is just partly educating the public on what are our exports actually used for, and then people fundamentally just not having an issue with that. So why shouldn't you talk about it at a barbecue, or why shouldn't you be out and proud to be a coal miner? So I think that's been a big part of it as well.
Is this where coal essentially has a PR problem? Because I'm from Victoria, so everybody thinks automatically of the dirty lignite stuff where I come from, but you're talking about coal that has very important use to future infrastructure, again, multi-decade infrastructure. How do we overcome this negative association with coal? What do we do?
Yeah, I think we're doing it as we speak. I think absolutely it has a PR problem. It's got a massive PR problem. But that can be overcome, I think, with people power. People need to stand up for their industry, and that's what we're seeing now. People are starting to come out. We need to inform people as to what the industry actually does. We need to inform people as to what it doesn't do as well. I just think it's a slow burn, long term process, but we're off to a flying start. So. We've run campaigns throughout Central Queensland. We've run them throughout the Hunter Valley. We will run more campaigns this year, just promoting what the coal industry does and how important it is. And that's just an education process, right? We've been absent from the fight. We've been off the field of play. We haven't even laced on our boots, frankly, for the last 15 years, in my opinion. Since the Australian Coal Association was subsumed into the Minerals Council and basically taken out the back and shot, that was the end of standing up for coal. And this is where it ends when you don't stand up for your industry. It's such an important industry. You end up getting taxed out of existence, regulated out of existence, and you can't attract the people that you need to build your industry.
Well, you say taxed out of existence and regulated out of existence, yet more than 40% of Australia's energy needs come from coal. So it hasn't gone anywhere. We just stopped talking about it. I know there is a lot of ideological talk about moving to renewable energy, but that's not happening this decade. It's not even going to happen many decades from now. So coal will remain a mix for a considerable period of time, regardless from holding up big buildings. How do we get this message across that it's still a good quality fuel source in Australia?
Yeah, well, I think Nick will talk about this longer than I will, but it's already still a huge part of our baseload power, right? So part of it's just been telling the story that you're actually, the cheapest energy you're getting now is already from our coal-fired power stations. So I think, there's plenty of discussion about that. Obviously, certain governments are leaning towards renewable projects, but you're seeing the coal power stations extended here in Queensland, and even in Victoria, where you were from, they let that out that there's another 5 years to go. So
we just quietly keep extending and hope nobody notices.
Quietly extend it. It's still a major issue in Western Australia as well. You've got all the power supply coming from the Collie area down there that they said would end, but it's going to have to keep going. So it's going to be a part of the mix for a while, but I know you're a passionate energy man.
Where to start? I mean, I think there are three things you need in an energy mix. You need low cost, you need energy security, you need to know it's reliable, and then you need to look after the environment. And I think you need to tackle all three of those. So at the moment, we've ignored energy security with our transition. We've ignored cost, and we're focused on one. And of that one, we're focused on only one particular part of that, which is the carbon dioxide emissions that come out of what they call fossil fuels or hydrocarbons. There are many aspects to the environmental situation, and one of them is that coal and gas and frankly nuclear take up a lot less space and impact a lot less people and rip up a lot less of our food bowls and a lot less of our remnant forests in central Queensland than do renewables.
Mm.
They're very space inefficient. They have a very low energy density, the renewables. And they're costly, they're expensive. Now, despite what some of our politicians tell us, unfortunately, renewables, by the time they're not dispatchable, they're not reliable. By the time you back them up with all the other systems you need to put around them, be they pumped hydro, be they batteries, let alone transmission, they become incredibly expensive. And so that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing our energy bills go through the roof. The study was done before the 2022 election, which said that our bills should have come down by $275. That didn't happen, right? I mean, we've gone up between 500 and 1,000, depending where you are. The same study came up with the Labor Party Commission came up with the 82% renewables by 2030. So, these things have been largely discredited now. And we've got to decide, Australia's gone from having literally probably one of the cheapest energy sources in the Western world to now having the 8th most expensive electricity in the entire world. And that is what's sucking our prosperity. That's what's sucking our standard of living, is that flows through all parts of the economy. So I think, we're now, the last year, and I'll get a little bit technical, but across the national electricity market, wholesale electricity prices average about 125 Aussie dollars. We've done a study at Coal Australia saying if you brought in the latest ultra supercritical technology there's now the Chinese are doing, and the Indians and other people, we can bring that down to sort of $50 to $70 a megawatt hour. So about half the cost of wholesale power. And then you don't also need all the transmission and all the other firming and other things that you've got to bring into it. So yeah, I think there's a reckoning coming that people are going to get sick of paying through the nose for their electricity and all their energy needs.
Well, I personally would rather spend my money on shoes than my disgusting electricity bill that I have at home. One thing I don't know if this is something I want to put to bed or not, but it's definitely worthy of discussion. And there's a lot of chatter around electric arc furnaces over coking coal blast furnaces. I feel that electric arc furnaces are still a very far off technology, and there aren't economies of scale there. But you're obviously, pardon the pun, at the coalface of this. Are coalface furnaces under threat from electric arc furnaces?
Look, electric arc furnaces are a current technology, and they work. They recycle existing steel, but they're capped out and limited by how much steel you can recycle. So blast furnaces operate from coke, which is produced from coke and coal, and use that in iron ore to make steel. So those are the two main ways of making steel. I haven't got my top of my head, but blast furnace is probably 70% of the market at the moment, something like that. Now that, as I say, the electric arc furnaces are limited by how much steel you have to recycle. Now, you're not going to pull down the Story Bridge or the Sydney Harbour Bridge and put it into an electric arc furnace until it's ready to go. So you've got a sort of 40, 50, sometimes 100-year lifespan for where you put your steel. So in mature economies like the United States, where they're not sort of building infrastructure as quickly and they are pulling down some things, the electric arc furnaces will play more of a role. But in growing economies and industrialising places like Asia and other places, that's not the case. So, there will still be a very strong demand, need for blast furnace technology in coke and coal for many decades to come. The other technology that they talk about is this sort of green steel, which is hydrogen, green hydrogen, inverted commas, which is basically taking sunlight and wind and turning it through an electrolyser into what they call green hydrogen. Then to transport it, you've got to turn it into either ammonia or liquid hydrogen. And liquid hydrogen is, you've got to freeze it down to within 20 degrees of absolute zero. Like, it's a very expensive, costly process. By the time you go down through that process and you go back up again, you lose something between 60 to 80% of your energy. So it's highly inefficient. Green hydrogen is not an energy source. It's a storage of energy, and it's a very inefficient one. So you're never going to stick all your excess renewables into green hydrogen and then make steel out of it. That's what they're using to create the green steel in theory. Now, green steel's now become, I think people have backed away from it. Even our federal government's probably realised it doesn't work. It's just costing billions of dollars and never going to be economic. I sort of say there's the last time I looked, there's a market in Rotterdam for green hydrogen. It's a very small market because it's very hard to make this stuff. And it traded about 14 euros a kilogram, right? So call it $20 a kilo, call it $20,000 a tonne. Coking coal at the moment, we're getting 177 US compared to 20,000. Now, there's a slight energy differential, but even so, you're never going to close that gap. So green hydrogen, green steel is not a thing. It doesn't exist. It won't exist outside of a laboratory. And so that is why I'm so confident in the future of coking coal, because outside of the recycling of steel, which will happen over time, but there's still huge growth in demand of steel, coking coal's the only option.
Grant, I'm going to come to you for this, and it's a thread that I want to pull on from something that Nick said, and that is that we've got the safest mines in the world and some of the highest quality coal in the world. I've got to ask, is it better that we are mining this in our conditions, in our jurisdiction, rather than having other countries, develop their coal sources, like Indonesia, for example?
I think the short answer is yes. I mean, on the coking coal front, it's the best in the world and not easily replaced. Like the deposits we've got in Queensland in particular are outstanding. But certainly on the thermal coal front, it's got to be part of that discussion around the full picture when you talk about the environment and the transition of energy. Is we've again got the best thermal coal in the world in New South Wales and parts of Queensland is thermal coal, but obviously in the Hunter Valley and the Gunnedah Basin and places in New South Wales that is being exported all around the world. People are still building coal power stations throughout Asia and all. We talked about developing nations before. So yeah, my answer is yes. I think we're going to do it more responsibly. We rehab our mines to a standard that other countries don't. So we've got all these things that we're doing that I think are best for industry.
And the quality of the conditions people work in have got to be much better here than third world mines.
We pay our people well. We look after them, and you don't see that in other jurisdictions. The other point I'd make is that demand for coal keeps going up. Thermal coal, met coal. Every year the pundits come out and predict, the naysayers come out and predict it's going to peak, and every year it doesn't. It went up again in 2024. We're now about 8 billion tonnes of coal a year that we're burning. And so, this is a demand-led issue. Us cutting off our supply is not going to change the fact that demand continues to go up. They're just going to go and take lower quality supply from somewhere else, and it's going to be more expensive. So it doesn't actually change the outcome in terms of how much coal is burnt. It just allows us to prosper from it and to provide our cleaner, more environmentally friendly, frankly, coal under conditions that are safer and better paid for our workers and support our Australian industry and our Australian coal communities.
And I guess to round out today's conversation, because I know you both have places to be and I really do appreciate your time, there's a coal event coming up on the 7th of August, so thank you very much for inviting me, gentlemen. Grant, what are you holding this event for?
It'll be great to have you there. Look, we set up the event. This is the 4th year. I set up the event 4 years ago because nobody else was. And people talked about they used to have these coal dinners, and as you said, the coal association was gone. It's like, I own my own business. It's a private company. I don't have to worry about what shareholders or banks or third parties are saying. So I was like, I'll put my hand up and start it. So that's simply where it came from. It was like, start to speak up for the industry. Let's get like-minded people together to do the same. And as we've gone on, we did the first 2 years on our own, and then Coal Australia was formed. And so we joined forces last year to make the event bigger and better. And we're doing the same thing again this year. So it's co-hosted by Coal Australia and my business, Mining Pro. And it's really a celebration of our industry. It's a discussion about all the hard-hitting topics that some of the ones you've touched on today. I'm sure the coal royalties will be mentioned many times in the evening, and it's a proper panel discussion of this. It's hard-hitting answers, but it's also just a chance for everyone in the industry to, like we said earlier, celebrate it. And we talked about Brisbane being the big mining town, so it's all the Coal Australia member companies, a lot of colleagues from the industry that we know, but there's also the law firms and the professional services firms and politicians and government and people who are all involved in the industry coming together on one night. So should be great.
Nick, will we see you there?
Yes, I'm actually, Grant's been kind enough to invite me on the panel, which is great. And I did the panel last year. It's the first one that I went to. But it was fantastic. It's a knees up. It's a celebration for coal. We're just literally singing from the rooftops of how proud we are of the industry. We're bringing all our sort of ecosystem, all our suppliers, as you said, all the lawyers, all the accountants, all these sort of people that rely on our industry. And we're just celebrating, having a bit of fun, as well as tackling some of the issues of the day. So, it's a different approach to the way the coal industry has probably operated in the past. It's actually being out loud and proud, and that's where we have to be. We have so many people in community and throughout Queensland and beyond, and certainly throughout New South Wales, that rely on the sector, and even in Victoria, where you come from, it keeps lights on.
Certainly does, and my heater going.
Until they shut your lawn, and you'll be in all sorts of trouble. But yeah, so it's a celebration of coal, and that's what's pitched out, and that's what it is, and it's a lot of fun.
And reminding people of the importance the coal industry plays, not just to Queensland, but to all of Australia.
Yeah,
agree.
Yeah.
Listen, gentlemen, thank you so much for today's discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you both on the 7th of August.
See you then.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.